People who don't know, the esteemed guest that we have in front of us, this is Sarah Golding, who is CEO, one of the joint CEOs at CHI. Tom Knox, founder and CEO over at DLKW Lowe, just round the corner, and then Neil at the end from Wieden, the CEO of Wieden and Kennedy. So some great minds to answer your questions. We're one down, I'm afraid. Considering this is a sold-out event, there seems to be half the room empty, so there's a lot of fees gone on a waste, but we're also unfortunately one guest down. So Gail, we're not sure where Gail is, Gail Gallie from Fallon, but I'm sure she'll turn up. She's probably winning some pictures as we speak. So that's all there is to say, really. I think it will turn into the temperature of the sun in this room, unfortunately. It's a greenhouse, but we'll try and move on swiftly, and we'll get you out by 10 o'clock if all goes well. So, does anyone have a question to kick off? I see one there.
Hello. So my question is, do you think account management has changed in the past 10 years? And if so, how?
What a great question. Who'd like to take that?
I'll try. Yes, I think it well, I think the job has changed because the business has changed. We still have to do all the same old stuff we used to do, but there's now a massive additional level of complexity with the changes in media and technology. And account handling, given that account handling is the job where you have to do not only your own job, but you have to understand what everybody else does as well, I think the job has become much more complex and more demanding. So yeah, there's a lot more stuff to stay on top of. So I think the fundamentals of the job are still the same. There's just more things that you need to be aware of and to understand.
Yes, boringly, I would agree with that. I think I'd stress that I think the fundamental things have stayed exactly the same. So I think the challenges and kind of the fundamental job of being an account person is the same. But I think everything has got to be done a lot quicker. I think account people probably have a lot less support than they used to do. I mean, when I started very early on, you got this sort of support system of PAs and things, even when you were relatively junior, and that's all gone. So I think you've got to be able to be much more self-sufficient than you probably were in the past. And I think that the main thing is this multifaceted aspect of it. I think interestingly, I think it's more strategic now. I think the relationship with planners is hopefully closer, and there's less of this sense of just in traditional agencies there was a real kind of baton handover, and it was right, anything to do with thinking, I'll give that to my planning colleagues. And I think account people are much more involved in should be much more involved in channel planning, making decisions about the construction of what the right team for any particular task is. So I think there's more of a kind of impresario role at the more senior levels, where you're trying to assemble a team of specialists that are going to be right for the task. So I think it's a lot more interesting, but it's also a lot more difficult.
The only thing I would add is I think that now, I think our role's ever more important. I think you have to be more paranoid because the market is oversubscribed in the West. I mean, I think you have to think if your client would accept a call, if one of my clients would accept a call or dinner from one of these guys, you know, I'm worried and I don't want that situation to arise. I think you've got to be more paranoid that somebody else knows more about what's happening in the digital landscape than you do, knows more about your client than you do. So in that respect, I think our job has got harder, but I think our role has become more important to the agency. You're even more of the linchpin. You hold everything together. Your relationship with the client has to be as tight as you like. But I wouldn't add anything more to what you said.
Thank you. Gail, welcome.
I won't add anything because I don't know what the question is, so I'm really sorry.
You don't know. So, as everyone's had at least 3 minutes to think of another corker, anybody would like to answer? Please.
I think it was Dave Trott a while ago, a few months ago, wrote an article about the commission system. He was advocating what a great system it was because we got paid for the work we did, and then the client spends money, and then we get the return on that. So, do you think we should return to the commission system?
Yeah.
Definitely not. I think the commission system was a nonsense, and there were a number of occasions when we were the beneficiary of it, where we were particularly with the COI, where we did campaigns. I won't name what stage of my agency's evolution this was, but campaigns that singularly didn't work, and therefore they spent more money behind them. So therefore we earned more revenue, which was, you know, clearly a completely screwed up system. So I think commission isn't a particularly accurate or good way of remunerating agencies. Obviously, another aspect of the way in which the job has changed is that remuneration's got a lot more complicated, and there are so many more different models. And I think you have to come up with models that will work for particular circumstances. But I think commission in a world where most of the spend was on TV and there weren't very many TV channels and it was all fairly straightforward, it kind of was a good shorthand, but I think it sort of fell into disrepute quite a long time ago, and it would be pretty retrograde to go back to it. There is no single perfect solution to how we should get paid, but something related to the time that we expend for our professional expertise is, I think, better.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it would be, in fact, it's unthinkable that you would go back to commission, because it would be utterly unworkable. Because what we do, for most of us, is in any way, the media is now disintegrated from what you're doing anyway, so you don't have control over the amount that's spent. The notion that, you know, as Tom's saying, the notion that the less effective your work is, the more you get paid, because the more your client has to spend, is completely counterintuitive. I mean, surely we should be trying to get our clients to spend less money on paid-for media, because the work is then working harder. So I think whichever way you look at it, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't relate to the way that agencies are structured now. It doesn't relate to the way that media works these days, and it doesn't relate to the actual quality and value that you're offering your clients. So no, I think it would be unthinkable to go back to commission. Yeah. Although we did get paid more in those days, so from that perspective,
yeah,
it was better.
But you know, the upside might be if you do something for one of your clients that works spectacularly, then you get some sort of return on that at the other end. So that's how most creative industries work, right? You make something brilliant, it sells loads, you make a lot of money out of it. And currently we don't have a system where you get some sort of share of that coming back. I mean, there are performance bonuses, but not effect bonuses in most cases. So I think that's where you get the uplift that we've lost from commissioning, is trying to work out, and we're not there yet, but trying to work out some kind of model where the idea you generated has made X million pounds of positive difference there, bottom line, so what do you get back?
You know, your successful work, if it's running right, then you should get some sort of dividends.
I think for me, it's not about how much, to Neil's point, it's not about how much does it run, because that's sort of admission of failure. It's how well did it do? You know, what did it actually sell or change?
I think sorry, I'm going to be player manager in this, because I'm sorry, I also should mention throwing up in his car, which was sick on his dashboard of the on the way in, so he's not going to be with us, unfortunately, so he sends his apologies. I think it does raise a broader issue in the structure of the agencies about which choices we're making about what we want to get paid for, what's our kind of core business. Some agencies are still in production, and if you make your money in production in certain business, it's very difficult to be the trusted advisor for a client. You just, by definition, everything's going to look like a nail if you're carrying a hammer. So I think, a lot of sensibly, all the agencies on stage, I think, have made very deliberate decisions not to be paid for the production of the assets. Obviously for the management of production we do get paid, but we're paid at the top for the creative and strategic origination, because that's the bit that's the trust retains trusted advisor status. Trying to have your hand in the till at the back end as well. There are still amazingly some agencies in town that charge commission on TV. How you can stand up in front of a client and say you have really strategically agnostic solutions when you know that you are going to get more money from that client if you recommend a certain discipline is ludicrous. And I think being the industry generally needs to kind of man up and be a little bit more professional about making its choices, deliberate choice about where it doesn't make its money versus where it does, because that blur of the line, there's still a whole generation of clients who think that we earn money, the bigger agencies in town, the bigger, better agencies in town, earn money every time they make a TV ad. And of course we don't. It's just through flow cost. Yeah, a lot of through focus, but nobody
They
takes
tend to
commission.
be, though, the clients who used to be account men back in the
That's right.
70s.
Who are
They're
busy
the worst
trouncing.
clients.
Dead right, dead right. Anybody else?
What advice would you give to selling new or brave ideas to clients?
Well, firstly, don't afraid to be the salesman. I mean, I think lots of my guys, they say, oh, but I didn't want to come across as too selly. Why not? That's our job. That's why we're presenting the work, getting our clients excited about a new idea than the planner is or the creative team. That's what we should be good at. And I think, you know, I feel proud that I'm a salesman. I don't just sell great ideas when they come along. I sell my agency, I sell my team, because I want the client to love CHI, not Sarah Golding, because a client can love a person and fire an agency, and that's a terrible place to get into. I mean, I can only speak from personal experience, but if I have a great idea, I kind of polish it, first of all. So I work with the team, get it absolutely ready. I buy myself some time from the client so that when I go in, it's like a pitch presentation. So I don't just go with a scrappy piece of paper. I mean, some people say a great idea sells itself. I'm not sure it does. I think the braver the idea, actually, the less it sells itself, because, you know, clients don't want to do, I mean, maybe I wouldn't want to if I was the client. Maybe that you don't want to stick your head above the parapet. It's easier just to do something similar to what did quite well in Link last year. If this is something quite different, I could, you know, I could actually fly or I could sink. So I just make sure I buy myself plenty of time, pull together a presentation of every single thing covered. So I just try and, you know, it's basic stuff. I try and Q&A the situation. So I think, right, could they ask, is cost prohibitive? If it features a celebrity, do I know that I can get that celebrity? Well, let's make sure I know that before I go into the meeting. If it's, you know, a little bit risque, can I get Clearcast to approve it? So do your due diligence, do your homework, and go in there all guns blazing. And I think about the casting of the meeting. That's really important. So some clients hate to be backed into a corner. So if you go there mob-handed with the creative team, because sometimes you think, oh, well, the client can't say no if the creative's in the room. I actually, sometimes for me, I'll mention the clients, I'm sure they won't mind, say British Gas. They love to meet the creatives and love to sit in a room and chat about the work. But we'll then have a subsequent meeting where we have a totally different meeting. So I found that was a waste of time. So they put on an act in front of the creatives, but felt uncomfortable with them in the room. They feel more comfortable with me and one other person presenting to them. So they feel you know, there's more balance. So I think you really have to take each client and each situation individually. But what I would say is prepare and prepare. You know, it's like revising for exams. You know, you wouldn't go in having not read cover to cover, you know, Madame Bovary if you were going into your French exam. So, you know, really, really do your homework. But don't be afraid of brave ideas. You know, brave ideas are what makes our job so exciting.
I think the selling of the brave idea happens a long time before as well. All of what Goldie says is absolutely right. But long before that meeting, I mean, the best account person I ever saw in action in this sort of respect, this is a very long time ago at Shite Day, was David Abraham, who's now the Chief Executive of Channel 4. And David basically made clients feel like they were having an interview with an incredibly sensible bank manager. So he was so professional, so buttoned down. He was working at the time, Shite Day was a, you know, we were a very kind of groovy, radical agency, and it was, you know, we were very much the Wieden or the mother of the day. But David was always immaculately presented. We had First Direct was the account that we had, and which was a sort of innovative bank at the time. And he managed to get them to buy, and also he did a great campaign for Ecover as well, which they were very, very radical ideas, which he led them to by inexorable little steps of logic, which were inescapable. So by the time they'd got to the point that was in fact incredibly radical, every little bit had been very logically worked out. And I think
you're good at this.
Yeah, I mean, these guys.
We share a client, and this was the most galling moment I had, where I was told, why don't you do what Wiedens do? What? You know, red rag to a bull. You do those brilliant kind of lead-ups, don't you, with visuals?
Yeah.
So you get them, the clients, to buy almost the tone of voice. And the
Well, it's not, it's kind of, like you say, you know, we don't tend to do the big ta-da, and here's the big idea, and because that builds up fear in the client. You know, oh my God, what are they going to show me? It's going to be completely mental. And I think if you did it like that, sometimes they would go, oh no, you know, well, that's not what I was thinking of. It's too mad, we can't do it. So you just take them along step by step, and you get them excited about it, and hopefully they don't kind of feel like they're being sold to. They feel like they're involved in it and having explained to them. But then I have a standard line as well that I use, which is to say to clients who think that something's a bit risky, which is to say, well, look, you can do something that's safe and sensible, and you'll stay where you are, or you'll get maybe incremental growth. But if you want to get extraordinary results, you have to do something extraordinary. You know.
And they go, yes, yes.
And hopefully they go, yes, or they go, no, we'll just settle for incremental.
Ordinary's fine.
I do think, though, it's really important to know your client and understand what scares them and what makes them tick. I mean, I'm sure you've all heard this, but there's the apocryphal Paul Bainsfair story, when I think he was a junior account man, and he was given a script to go and sell by the creatives, and that must have been back in the, 80s. And then, you know, the creatives are really scary, and it was literally, you know, you went, right, go and fucking sell this, and don't come back until you've sold it. I don't want to hear you've not sold this. So Paul Bainsfair, you must know this better because you must have worked with him. He goes up on the train it was up north, so let's say he went up on the train to Preston, and he got off and he went in to see the managing director of some, you know, god-awful northern, and I can say that, god-awful northern company. And he gets out, he's practiced and practiced on the way there, you know, his best public speaking voice. And he gets his script, he says, right, we've got a TV ad, we really think this, we've cracked it for you, Mr. Jones. He says, all right then, lad, come on then, let's hear it. So Paul Bainsfair goes, we open on a Caribbean beach. Oh no, we fucking don't. And he said he just had to walk, you know, leave the office. He threw him out, back on the train, and had to go and face the creatives. But again, I think if you knew at that point that, you know, your northern client who owned, I don't know, a sausage factory in Preston was never going to buy a script that said we open, I mean, maybe you don't even include that. He doesn't even need to know that you might shoot it in the Caribbean.
I think it's, I mean, I've been that client that you talked about on the receiving end of, you know, 10 really needy, keen children is what it feels like, going, please. And in that situation, it's annoying. You're never going to relax and listen creatively to stuff. And if you try and challenge anything, you feel like you're cancelling Christmas because they're all poised for you to say anything negative, and then you can see the energy break. So as the account person who, to your point, knows the client really well, if they are, put yourselves in their shoes, you know, it's not nice being sold hard to, and you immediately put your defences up because, you, like you said, you think, what are they going to try and make me do? Whereas if you're like relaxed, you've done your pre-work, you know, you've phoned them up maybe and said, this is going to be tricky, how many people do you want in the room? It's always worth asking about how do they feel about creatives presenting their own work. Because I think there's an assumption sometimes in agencies that, well, if it's important, we'll bring the creatives in. And actually, sometimes creatives aren't trained to present their own work. You know, it's really nerve-wracking for them because when you present it, you're presenting on behalf of somebody else. That's their stuff. You know, so imagine you doing that. It's very, very pressurized for them, and they often, you know, fuck it up, and then clients feel even more awkward because they, you know, they can see a human being struggling and they don't want to say anything bad, and the whole meeting energy breaks. So I would really, I don't know what the other agencies do, but I think the debate about do creatives best present their own work or not is one that doesn't get had often enough, and it really depends on who's the best presenter.
Sure.
You know, if you've got difficult work, send your best. Doesn't matter if it's the junior planner, doesn't matter if it's the ECD. Right. Whoever's a really good presenter, send them in and make them do it.
The only problem is if you're working with a creative director, for example, who thinks that they can present. I had one who shall remain nameless, and he insisted on presenting, and he was dyslexic. I mean, can you imagine? Words were back to front, you know, well, you know, you're a bit dyslexic, let me. No, I can present it, the client will buy it from me.
Yeah.
That's tricky.
Yeah, I think that was a good point about thinking, trying to put yourself in their shoes, because it's like if you've got something which is, you know, more difficult than they were expecting, more expensive than they were expecting, going to take longer than they were expecting, it's different from what the brief they gave you. The danger is that you're just giving them a problem, and you have to kind of think, well, how is this actually going to not give them a problem, but solve their problem. So you need to kind of put yourself in their shoes and say, so what's the thing we're trying to fix here, and how is this idea a brilliant way of doing it that's going to brilliantly deliver against their objectives, rather than, I've got enough problems as it is without something that I'm not going to be able to do and I'm not sure whether it's going to work. When
I was still a client at the BBC, I got presented something which was completely wrong for a launch we were doing, and we had a really good meeting, I thought. And then about 4 weeks later, I went back for what I thought was the next round of work. And what they'd done was, and rather than do any more work, they'd shot the one I didn't like, because they thought that would be the way that would persuade me that this was right. Which then it elevates that stress level of cancelling Christmas even higher, because now they've committed loads of their own money to make this thing, and I still hated it. You know, so that's the absolute opposite of what you're saying. That just gave me an enormous problem, because then I was a month closer to launch, and I still didn't have any ideas. So you really have to think about how am I helping their day, their business, their general flow of life in what you're doing, because otherwise then they really will bring up somebody else if you're just causing them problems.
There's also a very practical thing about, because there are philosophies about how different sell, and inevitably even the agencies up here will have different ways of selling, because the clients came to those agencies, were attracted them for that reason. So there will be a wide variety of styles anyway on the stage and in your agencies. But the absolute prerequisite for any account man in the room is to be able to present work well, and not present necessarily with the kind of the philosophies being talked about. Just literally being able to read a script out, perform a script, to act a script out, and to deliver the elements of a press ad in sequence that is logical, so a client follows it in the way that you'd want consumers to do. It's the most basic thing, but it's the thing that most often goes wrong. Because everyone assumes, on the whole, it's not something we train for enough in agencies, but making sure that you are at the very best you can be at doing that. Not everyone's a natural, of course, but being able to perform the work is really important, because that's the key determinant of agency profitability, is the number of times you have to go back into the creative department with a brief. You go back in once, just about break even. You go back in twice, the profit on an account is gone. Because creative time is the most expensive time in a building. So, and we're not in a commission world, we're in a fee world. So, and that's in your hands as account men, because it is predominantly account men who are expected to present work. And every time you come back, because, and of course there are variables, the client might just not like it, might be off brief, but if you're the variable because you delivered the work badly, the client didn't understand it because they literally didn't understand the narrative, then that's quite a big responsibility, and effectively you're costing the agency money. It's equivalent of a write-off, and that word in all agencies is, no account man wants to have a 50 grand write-off against their name because it's straight off the profit. That's what you're doing if you fuck up the presentation of creative work, to be frank. You're costing the agency money. You go back into the department twice, reiterations, that's what ruins profitability of agencies.
But also, don't set yourself up for failure. If you see the first thing that does come out of the creative department, and you know your client well, and you look at it and you know it's wrong. Not that it's not good enough, or things that you can't judge on, but you know it's fundamentally mismatched to the brief, or that there's something they've done before. Then go back in and do it, because it's you that's going to look stupid when you do, if you do try and sell it and don't comment. There's always a gut reaction when you first see something as an account man, always. And I think that comes pretty much, that's why you're in the job. It's not something that comes with seniority. I think you get it. And if you've got that, then make sure you have that conversation. They may then persuade you otherwise and say, no, it's right because, and that's great, because then you've had the argument as a rehearsal before your client gives you it. But don't blindly take something and present it on, because inevitably you will fuck that up.
Yeah, that was the great Jay Shyatt. I remember in a very scary session with him, he said to me, Tom, your job is to stop shitty work getting out of the door. He then went on to say, that is shitty work.
Exactly.
Which was slightly mortifying. And then he fell asleep, because he just got off the plane. But I do think that that is a key thing, is stopping shitty work. That is what we've got to do.
Keep the floor high. Very good. Next. Yes.
If you had to hang your hat on one thing that's helped your career the most, or helped you through your career, what would it be?
One what?
One thing that's helped you in your career.
Gin.
Johnny Hornby.
Gin. No, I think he's hindered my career really hard. That's really tough.
It's really hard to think
Good
of like
question.
one thing. I was asked a similar one recently, so I'll go first while you guys think. But I was asked about what key decisions you'd made and what was the plan and all that stuff. And I realised there definitely wasn't one. But I have realised that I've always done my best when I've been working in something that I was happiest at. The most passionate about, and then you just fly. You know, you don't see it as work and you don't see it as a hassle and time. You just see yourself as really lucky to be doing what you're doing. And it shows, you know, and I think people then you get promoted and, you know, you fly through your career. So I would say that, there's no shame in following what you're really passionate about.
I think I can answer it by saying I know what my biggest break was. So who gave me the opportunity that I think from then I kind of went up a gear. And that was Paul Hammersley, who now, you know, is the founder of Red Brick Road. And he was my boss at Lowe, Lowe had Spink. And I was an account director, and I was a really annoying account director. I was always like, you know, the girl, can I do it, can I do it? You know, the girl at the back of the room that always puts her hands up. And we always wanted to kind of, you know, how can I get promoted? How can I get on the board? You know, everyone wanted to be on the board of an agency, and yet actually you're in the minority if you weren't on the board. So that was the exclusive club. And I really, really wanted to get on the board. And I've been at Lowe's from a graduate to that point, so I've probably been there about 5 years. And we hadn't been pitching very well at Lowe. So I think we'd pitched 16 times consecutively and lost. And a huge pitch came through the door, and that was for Orange. And WCRS had the relationship with Orange ever since you know, it launched in the UK, which was what, 91 or something. Mm-hmm. And this was, you know, so exciting. And Paul Hammersley came in the door into we had offices then, so grown up, and he shut the door and he said, okay, you've been asking me for an opportunity. I've got one for you. How do you feel about heading up the Orange pitch? It's the most important pitch we're going to do as an agency. We have to break our record of no wins. Are you the kind of man for the job? And as I sat there, I kind of shat myself. I thought, I can't do it. I can't do a fucking pitch on my own. You know, yes, I am, Paul. Yes, I am. And inside my heart was beating. I was thinking, oh my God, I don't know where to start. You know, it was my first real big pitch. I'd done little ones like Pillsbury toaster pockets, but they were all kind of manageable FMCG pitches. And anyway, he believed in me, and I know there was a big hoo-ha amongst the other board directors because, you know, it was all very hierarchical in the early 90s. And you know, it was, well, why am I not doing it? Why have you given it to this upstart account director? But he believed in me, and we won it. And I mean, I had a great team of people around me. I had Alison Hode, who is the vice chairman of Rainey Kelly. I don't know if there are any Rainey Kelly people here. She was the planner on it, and this pitch went on for 6 months. And can I just have one little story? God, I'm turning into a rat gas bag, and then I'll shut up.
I'm just remembering that we were pitching against you at TBWA and you beat us. So I'm sitting here grinding.
Well, I had something to prove, and it was Paul Hammersley was amazing, but it could have gone horribly wrong, because at the time, and this is again, it goes back to, you know, understanding who the client is and trying to read them, and I got it really badly wrong, and we nearly fucked up in the middle of the pitch. So Orange was launched by a guy called Hans Schnuck, who is really weird, right? He's into all sorts of alternative therapies, and he was really into Feng Shui. And they were coming in for, you know, it was the kind of first, there were 2 presentations, as there often are, and it was the first presentation. And Lowe's boardroom was really boring and dry, and these guys were all, you know, cool and trendy and coming in their leather gear, and, you know, they were just, you know, been to see the latest art house movie. We were all, you know, trying to appear cooler than we were. So I've got a brilliant idea. We're going to Feng Shui the boardroom. It's going to go down absolutely fantastically. This is right up their street. They'll think we get them, because it was a bit of a cult at the time, Orange. They were saying, yes, but are we emotionally aligned as well as intellectually aligned? I mean, it really is a kooky piece of business, or it was then. I'm sure it's different now, Gail. And so Paul Hammersley and Alison and Charles Ing it was, they said, okay, yeah, no, it sounds like quite a good idea, Goldie. We don't really know what Feng Shui means, but you go ahead and do it. I spent thousands. I blew the budget. I must have spent, back then, 25 grand redesigning the boardroom. So I had a water feature in the left-hand corner. We had to present, apparently in Feng Shui, you have to present east to west, and our boardroom faced west to east, so I had to recombobulate the whole thing. I had a plant in one corner, because plants had to be so many feet from the water feature. I mean, it looked ridiculous, like a rainforest. And I was so pleased. Oh, you know, I don't even need to stand up and say anything. I've nailed it just with the Feng Shui. No other agency in town will have done this. So I cut to the meeting, and I proudly take the senior client through to the boardroom, open the door, and he went, oh my God, they've only gone and bloody feng shuied the place. What a load of bollocks. And of course, Hans Schnuck wasn't at the meeting. So I'd done my homework on the main man, but hadn't thought about who was coming to the pitch meeting. And they were like really down-to-earth normal people who, despite the leather jeans and, you know, art house movie fetish, weren't actually into feng shui. So we made a joke of it, obviously, and Paul Hammersley said, yeah, Goldie's just blown our whole new business budget for the year on feng shuiing, so we're going to have to stick with it. But we thankfully got through and then won it. Oh, shut up now, sorry.
So the question, for me, the thing that has characterised any success is surrounding myself with people who are a lot cleverer and better than me. So I was very lucky to set up an agency with very talented people, and so I think inevitably it's a cliche, but if you're an account person, you've got to be very, very good at relationships. And like Gail says, you do your best work when you're happy, and if you really, really like and even love the people that you work with, then you're going to be in quite good shape. So I think choosing your partners is absolutely crucial, and feeling, to use an orange, feeling emotionally connected with where you work is vital, because what we do is really, really hard, and if you don't love it and you're not feeling happy in your environment, then it's incredibly hard, because your job is to create an environment where everybody's feeling good, because that's when creativity happens. So I think the people that you surround you are inevitably the most important thing.
Including your clients, actually. When I think about when I went from advertising to client side at Radio 1, no question my best friends were the people, work friends, were the people who were running the account at Fallon. And we had this incredibly exciting, productive 8 years together, which has resulted in me coming back and running Fallon. So, don't just think your work is your agency side, your clients. There's some quite fun clients out there too.
Yeah. I would agree with all of that. The only other thing I would add, it's very hard to think of one thing, is boringly, I think in my case, it was just working really hard. I was always kind of conscious that I wanted to compete and keep up and overcompensate and be paranoid about my position, and so I always just thought, well, I will be prepared just to work bloody harder than anybody else and to go whatever it takes to achieve what it is I'm trying to do. Obviously, I don't do that anymore, and it's kind of coast along in my chauffeur-driven Bentley. But that would be what I would say, is don't underestimate, particularly these days. It's so tough and so competitive. You really have to be prepared to do what it takes, whatever that is.
Mine would be coming early. It sounds daft, but it's very practical. Start early. The only time you have protected time you have as account people is at the start of the day, because you can't protect it at the end. So if you come in early, that's the time you actually start to think. The rest is do. And actually good thinking reduces the amount of doing, and you can leave earlier anyway. So I'm always stunned by people who rock up at 10. There's a story about the two hunters who were going bear hunting, and one turns up in trainers, and the guy says, why are you wearing trainers? We're going hunting. He says, if a bear comes after us, I can run off, I'll outrun it. So you can't outrun a bear, it runs at 30 miles an hour, it'll catch you. The guy said, I don't need to outrun the bear, I just need to outrun you. Coming in early is the account management equivalent of wearing trainers, because you're ahead of the day, you're on top of the day, and either you manage the day or it manages you. And we all have those days when you come in and like, oh my God, I am so fucking out of control on this day. It's all over me like a rash. The ones where you're on top of it always tend to be the ones where you've got an hour's jump on it before it starts. So
you've all had it today, because you're going to
get That's why we start. That's right. I wouldn't go back if I were you. And secondly, go to the fire would be the other. It's like, there's all the accounts in the agencies that people think, glorious accounts, and we want to work on that because we're building a CV of brands. You need to build a CV of experience, and that means you get the best experience on the hardest accounts. So go to the fire. When there's a problem, that's where you learn. We're all expected to be fire prevention officers, but actually learn your best in being a firefighter. So, and actually it's quite stimulating as well, and quite challenging. A bit more stressful, but you learn the great skills when you're firefighting. So, Next.
Similarly, what would you do different? There was one thing or a decision.
Up here, please.
Oh, that different.
No, that's not quite what you meant, was it?
What would you do differently? Like, if
In
there's
your
one
career,
thing,
right?
yeah, if there in your career, if there's one thing that you could really hang your hat on that gave you the jump or whatever you did, what's one thing that you would do differently?
I would have taken more risks, so I would probably have left Lowe a little earlier. So I'm quite unusual in that I've only worked in 2 agencies, quite loyal, and I think the first time round I should have gone earlier, and I just was afraid because I knew that I knew I wasn't learning anymore at Lowe's, so it was post-Orange. I thought, oh, there's no other opportunity for me here. I was bored and I was cruising, and yet I knew I was in a good place because I was one of their own, because I'd been a graduate trainee, and I think somewhere I slightly abused that. You know, I knew I couldn't fuck up, really, and I think that's wrong. I think it's really good to be scared. So I wish I'd left a little earlier and, you know, maybe gone to another agency before then. I went and joined CHI, which was the startup.
I wouldn't have, I mean, it wasn't entirely my decision, I wouldn't have sold when we did. So we started in sort of back end.
Because you didn't make enough money?
No, we made enough money. There was the financial side of it was fine, guys. But we sold, we'd only been going for 6 years, which isn't that long. We sold in 2005, and I really underestimated the change that made, because you went from a thing where there was a real sense that everybody was in it together to them and us. I mean, it was just, you couldn't get over the fact. It was very public, you know, we'd sold to a PLC, so everybody knew if they bothered to look, you know, how much money we'd made. And so instantly, the relationship between us, the management, and everybody else changed because, you know, it did. And that was a shame, and we weren't, you know, it wasn't quite the same after that. And actually, I think we went a little bit early, although history, in retrospect, it was very lucky again, just purely financially, because of, you know, the world collapsing in 2008, shortly after we'd finished our earnout. So I think that I would have changed, and I think we would have paid. I think even once we had sold, I would have structured the deal differently, because having a very simple earnout is quite destructive creatively, because you become very, very profit driven, and I think our creative output really suffered towards the back end of it, because the imperative was all to do with pure profit. And, you know, Wieden's a great example of what can happen when you're not, you know, Jay Shire, at Shark Day, he literally didn't give a damn about whether the agency made any money. It was his agency. He was very clear about it. He just said, I don't care whether you make any money. Obviously, you know, I'd rather you didn't lose money, but what I really care about is the work. And if the work's great, the money will take care of itself. And I fundamentally believe that's true. And if you, now I'm very happy to be in a situation where that's a lot easier to achieve. So those are the 2 things I would have changed. I actually probably couldn't have changed them on my own.
I wish we'd won that Orange pitch. Other than that, I think it's difficult to pinpoint one thing, but it's more of a kind of a general behaviour, which is, you know, there's times where I kind of think maybe, I think you have a gut sense of what's the right thing, you know, and you have to be, you know, as an account man, you have to kind of be the conscience of the agency, and there's maybe times when I knew what the right thing to do was, and I didn't do it because it was harder, or because it was, you know, there was something that seemed more sensible or more expedient, and every time I've done that and I've ducked it or taken the easy way out or avoided the confrontation, I've regretted it afterwards. So I think that would be the main thing, is you have to trust your gut and do the right thing even when it's hard.
Yeah, I don't really do regret looking back. So I think it's a wasted emotion. I'm really pleased I did go client side for a while. I could easily have not, and the perspective it gives you is massive when you want to come back into industry. So I would say that. And so on that tip, I did get a chance to go and work internationally. and I didn't take it, and now I'm tied down, husband and baby and stuff, so probably won't. But I would say in this world, especially, if you've got a chance to work abroad at your stage when you haven't got so many ties, I'll give it a go, definitely.
Very good. Anybody else?
Yeah, you talked about how building relationships is kind of the bread and butter for kind of people, whether that's with clients or with internal creators. But the realities are, at the junior level, you're expected to be more of a doer. When does that kind of progression occur to building relationships? And also, what kind of qualities or skills shine for you in junior accounting?
I think when you're a doer is absolutely when you start to build a relationship, because you're at the cold face of these guys. I actually find it harder to build a relationship with a new junior creative team that comes in, because I'm probably not working with them day to day, trying to get a press ad out, a radio ad, whatever. So I think you're building relationships now, and those relationships are built on trust. So always be honest, always have the balls to tell them, the bad news as well as the good news. That's how I always was. I just was really open. Just don't hold anything back. Don't keep secrets. Just be honest. Be yourself. Don't pretend to be the account man you're not. Admit your weaknesses. Admit your fuck-ups.
But don't see yourself as junior. I think if you label yourself as, I'm junior, so I can't really have a relationship. Yeah. I was thinking about that on the way in. I think too many account people see clients as their parent. You get into a parent-child relationship, and you therefore do everything you did to your parents when you're an adolescent, like, lie to them and disrespect them, and take the piss out of them when they're not there. And that's just not healthy. So I think the quicker you, especially as the younger generation, stop seeing clients as some sort of parental figure that needs to be assimilated in front of, just have a laugh with them. I definitely, even when I was at my most senior at the BBC, I had my most fun and close relationships with the most junior people. Because as you say, they are the ones that will get something done for you without question. Yeah. So you've got a brilliant opportunity, and you're fresh-faced and sweet, and you'll get your clients, especially the ladies, really wanting you to kind of do what they want. And if you've got a unique opportunity when you're junior, I'd say. But don't call yourself junior, because that'll just limit you in your head.
And don't call your client dad. Embarrassing.
And what did you ask? What are the qualities that you look for?
Yeah, shy up in a young.
Exactly.
Enthusiasm, being the person who says, "Can I do that? Can I help?"
Yeah.
And doing what you say you're going to do ahead of the deadline.
Yeah.
And
also being a little bit funny. I mean,
and a healthy dose of insubordination.
Yeah, because the bottom line, the agency's bottom line is not on your shoulder, so you don't have to act like it. You do, I do.
Don't be vanilla. That's
boring. Just give us a laugh. Give us some energy.
And also some jip. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we are. I speak solely for myself here, not my colleagues. But we don't have a clue about a lot of stuff that you know a lot more about. We need to be challenged. I mean, what we don't want is just sort of some sort of quasi PA kind of just doing the photocopying. I mean, that's just not what's required. So, I think we want to be challenged and given a bit of, judicious jib, And
there is, I think, in account management, there is in the industry generally, there is an overhyped theory of the relationship, which I think actually is quite off-putting for a lot of account people, because it makes it sound like basically we're kind of hired girlfriends or boyfriends. You got to, it's a lot of arse kissing, and you're going to know what their kids are called, and some people take it to the extreme. Andrew Robertson, my global CEO, I mean, he used to keep cards where he used to write the details. He used to come back from a lunch, he used to write all the personal details and put it in a card filing system. Some people are very good at it, and actually that's how they connect with clients. Most people, normal human beings, rather than,
can't remember names.
Bonfire of the Vanities kind of psycho, who is extremely good for obvious reasons. I think you just do the job, right? Remember that your position, you are the trusted advisor. They've given the agency, and therefore you as part of that team, the legitimacy to advise them on what the best thing is, be it that smallest decision about a copy line or the biggest decision about a £4 million budget. I think taking that, people like people who help them.
Show that you love the work as well.
Yeah, everybody in this room was hired because they had a bit of a sparkle about them. Because one of the key criteria is, would I want to spend 3 hours on a train with this person? So you're all immensely likeable and charming. The clients will see that. even more so, they'll be more impressed by it because they're not necessarily surrounded with people like that at client organisations. So you don't need to kind of, yes, you know, I love that music that you love. It's fucking bullshit.
You love all that.
You know, that's horrible. That's the bit that makes you want to go home and scrub yourself with it's horrible, the idea that that's what we do. You know, it comes, you know, just doing the job for the client, doing well for the client, helping the client for their business needs, their strategic requirements, and doing it in a pleasant, charming way. And that's how a relationship is built. If you focus on the means, rather then it can get a bit confused sometimes. And that's the bit I think that dumbs down our discipline. Relationship and it's too bold, isn't it? So, yeah, job. I'll send you some tickets because you love that fucking gallery or bullshit. This is like do the job, and you get a relationship out of that, and a positive one rather than a slightly seedy one.
I could watch you doing impersonations out there for hours, so it's really fun.
I mean, I would never turn down a 2-bottle lunch, but nonetheless.
But you know, Mark Zuckerberg, just to think about your generation, your digital point. You know, Mark Zuckerberg didn't sit around being anxious about whether he launches a Facebook because he was a bit junior. You know, just be yourselves. You know, you've got an amazing opportunity. You've got all the energy that we haven't got anymore. You haven't got so many worries, and you've got all the knowledge. And as you said, you've been hired because you're charismatic and you've got a bit of flair. So what's not to win? You know, don't hold yourselves back by worrying about hierarchies and layers. Just get on with it.
Which is, you know, one of the best things about advertising is that it is very, very meritocratic. You can get given a lot of responsibility very, very quickly if you merit it. And that's, I think, one of the single best things about our industry is that it really rewards chutzpah.
Okay. Any more? Oh, don't be shy.
We talked about sending in brave ideas, but there seem to be less and less of them around these days, especially in the UK. I was just wondering if you had any kind of thoughts on why that is, or you maybe disagree.
I don't
Good,
think
they need that
necessarily.
permission.
I don't think that's necessarily true.
Are you basing that on Cannes or?
Or your own agency.
Oh yeah, well thank you very much, Gail. Dan is from DLKW Lowe.
Yeah, I don't agree that there's less great ideas around at all. I think there's loads of brave work around. I don't give a shit about Cannes.
I think maybe they're just different. You know, in the past you might say a brave idea was open on a Caribbean beach and spend $2 million. They're different now. You know, the Cannes winner that I thought was interesting, the most interesting was the World Wildlife Foundation's unprintable PDF. So rather than save it as a PDF, save it as a WWF, which means it can't get printed. That's a massive idea and a brave one, and I'm sure took a lot of selling and development, but, you know, fantastic. I think they're even bigger than they've ever been. It's just that they play out differently. So maybe they don't look like what we used to call a big idea, but, you know, they're definitely there. I think clients, in a recessionary period, it's difficult for clients to feel bold. You know, it's like you. If you're worried about how much money you've got to spend, you make much less bold choices about what you buy and what you eat and all the rest of it. So that's definitely true. I think it's difficult. It's more difficult.
Although I'm not disagreeing, but conversely, a lot of our clients have been saying because it's a recessionary environment, for God's sake, give me something different. You know, I need to be heard. I want, and they feel braver than they have been. You know, they've even said we might not link test this. And I agree that there tends to be an over-reliance on research rather than, you know, gut reaction. But there are those clients out there who go, yep, I love it, let's just do it, whatever it takes.
The UK questions, that part of your question is interesting though. There's an ad, I don't know if it won a Cannes or it was on a director's showreel for a Hoover. Has anyone seen it? But it starts as if you're watching The Exorcist, and it's really dark. And I mean, so there's no trace of humour in the first bit. And then their daughter's sort of sucked up on the ceiling and she's going across like that. And then you cut to the lady above, this lovely old lady, sweet. I don't know if any of you guys made it, sweetly hoovering. And I mean, it's just fucking hilarious. You'd never get away with that in this country because the religious lobby would shut you down. The BACC would never let you do it. And there's another director showcase about skate dogs. It was just a short film about people skateboarding on their dogs, which, again, with the nation of pet lovers, you'd never be allowed to do in this country. So I do think from an IPA perspective, there's a job to be done with the regulatory framework in which we operate, because we do have extremely tight standards in terms of what we can and can't do that sometimes the rest of the world don't have. So when you see an international showreel, sometimes you think, oh, blimey, Argentina's so hot, or you look at South Korea, they can do what they like. It's just, you know, we're quite buttoned up in this country. So I think there's an industry job there to try and create the space for creativity to happen. I think we come up with it, just whether we can actually make it or not is
I also think people don't remember the bad ads. Yeah, there's always that kind of effect of kind of the golden era of advertising. It's, in life, isn't it? All kids are ruder these days. I mean, it's just the same as it has always been. But no one everybody remembers, great ads because on a regular basis, the books, the films, the IPA. Nobody remembers the bad ones, and I'm sure it was a similar ratio. It's interesting to look back. I mean, we did it as an exercise a couple of years ago. Just dug out some old reels, agency reels from under Abbott's tutelage. There were some shockers on the reel, and this was the best of the best, best of the agency's output. And you watch some of it, and you just thought, oh my lord, that's horrific. The Caledonian Girls. It was just just an extraordinary campaign. But of course you don't, and that's on the reel. That's the not even the 95% of stuff that wouldn't go on the reel. So I think we just forget that. We forget that there's a lot of dross then, still a lot of dross now, and therefore equivalent there must still be some great ideas.
What advice would you give to an accountant whose creative director likes to push the boundaries, but whose client really likes to play it safe? And you're stuck in the middle.
But you need that tension. That's great. Which agency are you at?
BBH.
Oh, I think that's absolutely fantastic, and that's why you produce such brilliant work, because your job is to bring the two together. And all the things that we've said this morning about understanding your client, understanding what scares him or her, should get you to a place where you can either get them in front of the creative director if they like that, or you present the idea softly over time, step by step, as we talked about. I mean, I think most people would kill to be in your position. I mean, the worst thing to be is in an agency where you've got the reverse. Yeah. Believe you me.
I think work out what pushes your clients' buttons as well, and then work out how to back sell what you're trying to do, what your creative director's trying to do. So very few clients don't like results, to your point earlier. So if he's particularly kind of sales focused or whatever his category is, get some case studies where blinding creativity has massively transformed the business, and just regularly get him into that kind of dialogue, so that when you are trying to present a difficult idea or what he thinks is difficult, you can refer back and say, but remember the 25% uplift on the back of X campaign. So just start where he is, basically, or she, and work out what really pushes their buttons, and then you can have the right conversation. Because I think so often agencies with clients, they end up just talking a completely different language. It's the classic metaphor of you go into a shop and you want a dress, and they come back and they give you a really brilliant pair of trousers, and you're like, I love them, but I definitely need a dress. You're like, no, but look how short they are. And on and on and on, and you're just never going to agree. So just find out what he's excited about and how you can get into his market, and then have the conversation on the back of that. Yeah. The period of time, though.
Yeah, it's back to that. I think it's back to what I was saying about David Abraham and the step-by-step thing. Is so try and avoid the situation where you're making this giant leap between kind of a creative vision and some sort of conservative point of view here, and tiny little steps will get you there in a kind of mediated way. But it's never, if it's just pure conflict, it's always going to be a car crash.
It's quite a neat definition of account management and planning to a degree. Is clients know what they want, or they start knowing what they want, and agencies probably are best know what clients need, and it's closing that gap. And that trying to make clients want what they actually need is the definition of what we should be doing every day. But you have to, the only thing you can ever use for that is consumers and business, because that's the one thing everyone can agree on, because it's relatively objective. Those are the business objectives, and that's what the consumers think. Sometimes consumers can be your best friend in situations like that, because people like good ideas, and sometimes just what you don't want to do what your consumers think is the best thing. Quite a hard thing for clients to say no to. That traditional idea that research is going to fuck everything. Sometimes it's sometimes the greatest aid to get the best work out. But just say what they said. It really helps, I think.
Have you ever had any really difficult conversations, and what would be your advice? Just phone and be ballsy and say yes, not happening, or sucking dogs run off with it, or I don't know, like timings and money-wise. If something's gone wrong with a campaign, what would be your advice to that? Also, Gail, on the client side, how would you like people to approach that with you? I don't know if it's really awful news.
It's like anything in life, isn't it? Right? I mean, I didn't imagine if your kid or your husband if there's bad news to be told, think in your personal life, how would you like that to be told to you, and then act accordingly. So generally, I mean, it is personal, but I would say ideally in person, as soon as possible, close to the event that it's relating to, and with complete and utter honesty. And like, I'm sure everybody, have you ever had difficult conversations? Like, yes, loads on both sides. And I think that I always start it with don't build up to the bad news. I always start with there's been a massive fuck up, or, you know, we've gone hugely over budget, let me talk to you about it. Just get the worst bit out of the way, and then explain. Because most clients aren't mean, you know, or bosses or whoever it is you're having to talk to, and they'll appreciate the fact that you're really honest. Be personal about it. Say, I am dreadfully sorry, not, oh, the director's done this, or that pesky creative person did that. Just take the rap and say, I feel very bad about this, but this is what's happened. And it's pretty good, I think, navigating through life, really, is do it, you know, on time, in person, and transparently.
Yeah.
It's never as bad as you think, actually, either. It's never, the reaction generally is better than what you anticipate, I think.
Don't never do it by email. I think that's the worst thing. I have a rule as well of I do my sad little list of all the things I have to do in a day. Is I always say worst first. You know,
yeah,
so what's the most difficult call or meeting you got to have? Do that one first, and then the rest of the day seems relatively straightforward after you've got that out of the way. And like Gail says, you know, you can build up to these things thinking, oh God, this is going to be terrible. But you do also sometimes have to think, what's the worst that can happen here? You know, they're not going to kill me.
We did one recently, it's a real example, which I don't think is like controversial. We did this thing called the Tate Movie Project, where we got kids from, a Fallon idea to work with the Tate to get kids into art. They did a roadshow over the course of 12 months where they travelled around the country, filming these workshops of kids doing the drawings. It was incredibly sweet. They sent us the rushes for us to make a promo film for them. And someone left them on the floor and the cleaner threw them out. Gone. And about 3 people in Fallon, I think, you know, almost killed themselves. And the duration of that day, because they didn't tell them straight away, because they're trying to get them back. You know, I mean, we had people in rubbish dumps trying to, you know, they'd gone to East London. Really, I mean, I've really felt so awful. And when we called them up, they said, oh, happens to us all the time. Our cleaners have thrown out artworks worth millions. Totally understand. Let's see what we can salvage. And they were amazing. And literally, we could have saved so much personal grief and stress if we'd called them straight away. But as it happens, we were trying to fix, you know, checking it was truly gone. But I don't, you know, it just shows, you know, your worst fears generally don't come true.
I completely agree with what Neil and Gail have said, and you know, another good thing about advertising is, you know, it's not open heart surgery. So if we, you know, the worst thing we can do, obviously, you know, we can screw up people's businesses, but actually not very long term. You know, a bad campaign is not going to be, you know, we've been guilty in the last year of doing, you know, just a terrible campaign for Halifax, and yeah, and I fully hold my hand up for that. Fully responsible.
Ice up, baby.
Yeah,
come
exactly.
on.
I mean, and we got, you know, when we got our just desserts of that, as they had a pitch, we said, right, we're not going to pitch for that because we knew we weren't going to win that. And, you know, is that a disaster? Not really. And also, you know, some of the really terrible things that happen in retrospect are, you know, can be quite funny. I mean, one of the worst things that ever happened to me was we had this is a long time ago, we had a client called, it wasn't Centre Parks, they were Oasis, I think they were called. It was like a competitor to Centre Parks. And they had his new managing director, and he asked to see the reel of commercials. And this was, you know, before you had editing suites in the actual agency, so we just got the mill or whoever it was to send the tape. And this is a sort of boring account man lesson, but the account director didn't check the tape before it went out. So it was a lovely Sunday afternoon. This managing director's telling his family and his kids about his new job and saying, you know, what's this? And here are the adverts. He puts it on to enjoy some hardcore German porn, which had been left on there, and was, you know, some horrible geeky bloke at the mill had been enjoying this and had just taped over. So we get a phone call that says, you know, what's with the dogs and the, you know, and the Germans. And that wasn't good, you know, but and we lost the account. But it was, you know, in retrospect, you know, whatever. It was not the end of the world.
Take back.
We did get a tape back. Yeah, it was extraordinary.
2 more questions. Just come out to 10 o'clock at the top.
If you could switch places or switch roles with anyone else on the panel, who would you choose and why?
What, with this lot? Yeah. Oh, right.
I'm the chairman, so I take part in this question.
I'm going to go female solidarity, Gail.
And you back.
Yeah.
Great.
Right
Go
back
girl.
at you.
Go girl.
Right, boys.
I think I'd want to be Ian because, you know, I think Abbott Mead's a fantastic agency. I think he's done a great job. It's, you know, I think it stands for, you know, main reason I went into advertising was because of David Abbott, and it's managed the incredibly difficult trick, which we're now trying to do, of being a domestic powerhouse and being part of a great network and being a really good player in that network. And it's an extremely hard thing to do. And so, yeah, I'd be in. He's probably paid a lot as well.
I'm not, Tom.
I honestly, I don't know. I think it'd just be, any of them would just be interesting, because it's always just interesting to see the similarities and the differences at different agencies. So not having worked in that many different agencies and never having worked at any of the places that these people are at, just would be fascinating just to see what life's like on the other side of the fence.
In a similar vein, how important do you think it is to have a mentor or someone you look up to within your own organisation or agency, or do you think you can look out to other people and be just as successful?
I think it's very important. I think the minute you don't have somebody within your agency that you look up to and respect and think, wow, I want to be like them in a rather kind of pathetic way, I think you should leave. So I've, you know, who said it on, somebody said this very clever point on the panel, which is surround yourself with brilliant people. And I think that's so true. You know, be a sponge, soak up all their brilliance, and that will make you better. Really, really important that you respect your, I mean, not only your management team, but I think, you know, your line manager, whoever you work into, really important.
I would agree with that, and seek them outside as well, not just outside your agency, but outside your industry. Because if I think, it's hard when you're running one, because you obviously don't have many above you to go to, but I've still got a network of mentors from all through my career that I go and see, and always invaluable. But the perspective you get from one who's not your industry, who you can just tell it all to, and they'll just give you a mind-blowingly different and fresh view, especially on problems. You know, you'll be like, I've lost the tapes, you know, massive. Yeah. And then you'll get someone, you know, who is a surgeon, or, you know, who's running a car factory. He'll just say, call that a problem? And then they'll reframe it for you, and then you're off again. So I would definitely say seek them out. Best learning you can have, I'd say, a mentor. When you get on with them, you know, and you connect properly with them. Definitely.
And they don't even have to be within your discipline. So my external mentor was Lawrence. So obviously he's one of the best planners that ever walked the earth, and he was my external mentor and took me under his wing at Lowe, and he was there, and that was interesting as well. You know, having a mentor from a different discipline just made you look at things in a more lateral way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. Yeah.
And they never mind. I mean, I've always found that people, it's flattering to be asked, because it's not that arduous being someone's mentor. You know, you see them 4 times a year for a coffee or lunch or whatever, and so it's a nice thing to be asked to do. I know now from being a mentor. So I would just like be quite selfish about it. Think, who do I rate? Who do I think would be really, really good? And just drop them a line.
Yeah, no, they love it.
Work.
I mean, my mentor's Winston Fletcher, who, you know, many of you might have heard of. He's sort of, and he's brilliant because he worked in the industry for so long. I mean, like, he went, I think he started in the 50s, and so you just get a perspective, and you tell him a problem which you think is terribly modern and has never been encountered before, and he'll go, "Oh yes, I know about that," and it's all very kind of. It's actually really nice and warm, and I know he really likes it. You know, I still see him, and I think it's a really important thing. You know, getting a network of mentors, and also to Gail's point earlier on about clients. I mean, clients, you know, particularly ex-clients, because you're sort of out of the hurly-burly, they're brilliant to talk to because, you know, they'll give you that perspective. That, you know, unless you've had Gail's experience, I mean, I've never been a client, so hearing from a client is always really good.
Yeah, you play it right with clients, and you can be simultaneously getting mentored and building the relationships. Yeah. It's win-win.
But don't do it because of that, because then they'll find you out.
One very last question then. I've got 10 minutes to go. Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'm slightly conscious of asking this question. in the IPA, but to what extent do you think advertising by agencies needs to sell itself?
Great question. I might kick off on that. I was going to give a plug at the end anyway to the IPA. Peter Field, who you may have read about in Campaign, Peter Field, very, very smart man, has just done a study which aligns creative awards to effectiveness awards, which is the study that should have been done 20 years ago. And somebody's actually, Peter's actually gone through the hard work and done it, working with Donald Gunn of the Gunn Awards. And I think that is a really important moment, because that's the first time we've had the evidence to present back to other industries, our clients, other associated disciplines, to say that there is a very strong correlation between great award-winning quality work, great work in our view, and great work that works. And I think that until that's, I don't quite know how we've done it without that. I mean, of course, you do individual case studies, and X did Y, and O2 did that, and Hovis did, ABC business results. But to have it at a holistic level, on a macro level for the whole industry, I think it's incredible that that's never been done. And the fact that he's done it, I recommend all of you read it, because and the IPA will have some kind of pamphlet or something that gives you a précis, and there'll be a book at some point, I'm sure. But that is an absolute key piece of research, because it will do exactly that. It will prove that the two things are aligned and not divergent.
That's Nicola Mendelssohn's agenda for the next 2 years, isn't it? To raise the profile of advertising in the UK. And if you go onto the IPA website, you can actually watch the video of her speech, and it's worth watching. And she includes within that all the initiatives that her and the council are going to take on to do that.
Yeah.
It's got to be really good. Sorry, there's no point advertising yourself for the hell of it. You just have to be good. I think that the watch out for me and for our industries, you look at the Googles and the Apples, right? The two most successful and arguably most creative companies that have come out in the last 5 years. They've built themselves. That they're only beginning to use advertising in the way we would call it now. Arguably, Google's not doing great advertising work, weirdly. Now it's got agencies involved, something's not working. And I think we have to continue to outsmart these industries where, they have smart people. And I think owning the consumer, owning the marketplace, the perspective we can give, all of that will remain very, very valid. Only if we remain ourselves ahead of the game, which is Nicola's one of her initiatives that I'm working on with. Because if a client can go straight to a games company and get a better result than paying the fees and the arduous journey of via an agency, they're not going to. In these very quick, very connected and very cash-strapped times, they're going to do that deal direct. So you have to be adding more to that relationship. We're not going to carry on just because we are the advertising industry. Industries go down if they're no longer needed. Yep. Look at shipbuilding. So you have to watch. You don't want to be the shipbuilding of the creative industries, right? You need to stay smart. Just linking back to your point about being the young ones, you've got that. You hold that power to keep renewing the likes of us and taking us forward. And you've got to stay in that conversation by merit, not because you advertise yourself as being important.
Yeah, I think it's about day to day, all of us, not doing crap that spams up the media, but doing brilliant work that is demonstrably effective for our clients and that enhances popular culture and that people love. And if we do that, then the industry will stay, and if we don't, it will disappear.
Yep.
Here, because I mean, everything that is happening technology-wise has the potential to be incredibly irritating. If it's crap, because the opportunities to
it could be that much more annoying.
Yeah, to pollute popular culture are ever greater. So I think it's incredible. It is deeds rather than words. And
also, I think there's an expectation that we look to the IPA to prove the case.
Yeah.
But set an exact. All the people in this room. We had 30 minutes and a blank sheet of paper, and the exam question was, how does advertising work? How would you answer that question? It's quite a sobering thought. I mean, I struggle, I have to say, because there are lack of intellectual underpinning about what our business actually contributes, how it actually works, the mechanics, psychological, etc. It's a moot point, and that's why Peter Field's work is so important. It still is looking at outputs, the variables at the end of the process rather than the means to the outputs. So, getting into that, some of there is some theory, there's lots of theory, there's lots of quite hardcore intellectual evidence about how advertising does work, from low involvement processing through to, the stuff that Byron Sharp writes. I think that's the stuff, all of us need to be reading, particularly account men, because that's the stuff that clients, unless you can talk that fluidly and fluently, then there's not even a place for advertising at the table, let alone great advertising. There's two stages of questions there, so I think it's an important thing to, the more you get into it, it's also quite interesting. We hire all these fantastic graduates who've done amazing subjects at college, and then we expect them to run around photocopy and do contact reports. There is massive intellectual equivalent to be learned. We just give people the opportunity, I think, sometimes, and that's a shame. Okay, on that bombshell, it's 3 minutes to 10. You're all behind, you're not wearing trainers, so we better wind up. Thank you very much. I think, Emma, what's the next? Is there another IPA event, client service group, scheduled?
We don't have anything planned as yet.
It'll be post the summer.
Yes.
Post the summer. And so keep your eyes peeled for the next one. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.